Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today. I want to talk about something that so many of us have felt but rarely know how to name: the pain of letting go of someone who was never truly ours. It's that quiet heartbreak, the one that doesn't always come with closure, but leaves a lasting impact on our self-worth. We hold on to hope, to potential, to moments that felt real, and it can leave us questioning our value when it ends. But today, I want to help you find clarity, strength, and peace in that release. Let's begin. One of the hardest things we can go through is letting go of someone we never truly had. And I don't mean that in a casual way. I mean those situations where you felt everything for someone, maybe even built a future in your mind with them. But deep down, if you're being honest, they were never really yours, not fully, not emotionally, not in the way you needed. That space between what we gave and what we received, that's where the real pain lies. It's funny how we can feel such a deep loss over something that, on paper, never fully existed. Maybe it wasn't a defined relationship. Maybe they never introduced you to their friends or made you a priority, but emotionally, you were all in. You showed up, you cared, you waited, you hoped, you built castles out of moments and gestures and maybes. And so, when it ends, or when they pull away, it doesn't feel small just because it was never official. It feels enormous because your heart doesn't need a label to break. The pain comes not just from the person, but from the illusion we held on to, the idea of who they could be, what the two of you might become. That fantasy was comforting, even exciting, and that illusion made it easier to ignore the signs that they weren't really choosing you. But when that illusion finally collapses, it hurts twice. First, you mourn them. Then you mourn the version of reality you clung to so tightly. But here's the truth. If someone couldn't or wouldn't show up for you, they weren't truly yours. And I don't say that to be harsh. I say that to give you peace. Because when we hold on to people who aren't meeting us halfway, we're not in a relationship, we're in a waiting room. We're putting our life on pause, hoping they'll come around, hoping something changes, and in the meantime, we're shrinking ourselves to fit the small space they're offering. The illusion of ownership, that idea that this person was mine, it's just that, an illusion. What makes someone truly yours is their investment, their commitment, their consistency. It's not about how often they text or how intense things felt for a while. It's about whether they made you feel chosen, not just wanted. There's a difference. Letting go doesn't mean you never cared. It means you finally stopped fighting for something that only you were trying to build. And when you let go of someone who was never fully yours, you're not losing a person. You're freeing yourself from a story that was never truly mutual. You're choosing peace over potential, and that is one of the bravest, most powerful things you can do. Because you deserve to be in something real, not something almost. One of the most dangerous things we can do to ourselves after a breakup, especially one that was never clearly defined, is cling to the hope of what could have been. We get stuck in this loop where we play back the best moments, analyze every word, and convince ourselves that maybe, just maybe, it was on the edge of becoming something real. That maybe if we'd said something different, done something more, or just waited a little longer, it would have turned into the relationship we so badly wanted. But there comes a point where you have to be honest not with them, but with yourself, because hope, when it's not grounded in reality, becomes a trap. You start to live in a fantasy built on potential instead of facing the truth of what was actually happening. And the truth, it's usually right there in front of us, but we don't want to see it. Maybe they were inconsistent. Maybe they kept you at arm's length. Maybe they gave just enough to keep you hanging on, but never enough to feel secure. You keep waiting for them to step up, to change, to finally realize your value, but they don't. Not because you're not enough, but because they're not choosing you in the way you need. It's painful to accept that. It feels like defeat, like giving up on the story you were writing in your head. But the moment you choose truth over fantasy, you begin to take your power back. You start to separate what you wanted to happen from what actually happened. You stop making excuses for someone's absence and start recognizing the emotional void they left you in. It's hard because we're wired to chase closure. We think that if we could just understand why things didn't work out, it would hurt less. But sometimes there's no satisfying explanation. Sometimes people don't show up simply because they're not ready or not willing or just not right. And that doesn't mean you were wrong for hoping. It just means it's time to redirect that hope somewhere healthier, somewhere grounded, somewhere mutual. You can love someone deeply and still accept that they were never capable of loving you the way you deserved. You can be heartbroken and still choose to see reality for what it is. That's not weakness, that's strength. That's clarity, and clarity is what helps you move forward, not clinging to a version of them that only existed in your imagination. Stop giving weight to potential and start responding to facts. How did they make you feel consistently? Were you anxious more than you were secure? Did they show up when it mattered? Did you feel chosen or just convenient? When you stop confusing hope with reality, you finally begin to heal. And that's when you start to make space for someone who doesn't leave you guessing. One of the most damaging things that can happen when someone doesn't choose us or when they keep us at a distance is that we start to internalize it. We make their inability to show up, to commit, to be clear about what they want mean something about us asterisk. We start questioning our worth. We start asking, what's wrong with me? Why wasn't I enough? What did I lack? And those questions, left unchecked, can eat away at our confidence and make us feel like we're somehow unlovable or flawed. But here's what we need to understand. Just because someone couldn't love you the way you needed doesn't mean you're unworthy of love. Their actions or lack of action reflect them not you. People are dealing with their own limitations, their own fears, their own timing. And a person's decision not to go deeper with you doesn't automatically mean there's something wrong with you. Sometimes it's just that they couldn't meet you where you were, and that's not your fault. We've got to stop seeing someone's absence as proof of our inadequacy. The fact that someone walked away or never fully stepped in doesn't mean you were too much or not enough. It doesn't mean you were asking for too much by wanting consistency, honesty, or emotional presence. Wanting those things is not a flaw, it's a standard. What actually damages us isn't just the rejection, it's the story we tell ourselves afterward. That maybe we were boring, or too clingy, or not attractive enough, or too emotional, but these are just stories born from insecurity and hurt. And the longer we hold on to them, the more we shrink ourselves to avoid feeling that rejection again. But let me tell you something, real confidence, real self-worth comes from refusing to let someone else's behavior dictate how you see yourself. It comes from knowing that your value doesn't go up and down based on someone else's interest. You are not defined by the person who couldn't choose you. You are defined by how you choose yourself in the aftermath. It's so easy to look at someone walking away and assume it's because we weren't good enough. But what if instead it's because they weren't capable of giving what we were ready to receive? What if their leaving isn't a reflection of your lack, but of their limits? That shift in perspective changes everything. It stops being about rejection and starts being about redirection, away from someone who couldn't see your worth and towards someone who will. So if someone didn't choose you, let it be a reminder not of your shortcomings, but of your standards. Because you're not here to convince someone of your value, you're here to live like you already know it. When we let go of someone, especially someone we were emotionally attached to, it almost always feels like loss. That's natural. It feels like something important is being taken from us, even if that thing was never solid, never fully ours. But what we often don't realize in the moment is that sometimes what feels like loss is actually release. And that release, though painful, is the beginning of freedom. You might be grieving right now, grieving the connection, the closeness, the laughs, the intimacy. But so much of that pain comes not just from the person, but from the idea you had of the person, or the relationship you thought was developing. Maybe you kept hoping they'd change. Maybe you held on to the belief that if you were patient, if you were understanding, they'd eventually give you what you needed. That if you loved them hard enough, they'd meet you halfway. But here's the thing, you can't grieve someone into becoming who you hoped they'd be. And holding on doesn't bring them closer, it just holds you back. That tight grip, that refusal to let go, it only prolongs your pain. It keeps you tethered to someone who was never really walking beside you. And I get it, letting go feels like giving up. It feels like failure, but it's not. Letting go is recognizing that something is no longer serving you, even if part of you still wants it. It's the ultimate act of self-respect. It's not about denying your feelings, it's about protecting your future. See, there's a kind of peace that only comes when you stop begging for crumbs of connection, when you stop trying to decode mixed signals or justify silence. That peace may not come immediately, in fact. It might come after a lot of tears and confusion, but it does come. And when it does, you'll look back and realize that what you thought was love was often just longing. What you thought was chemistry was sometimes just inconsistency wrapped in hope. And that release, that's you reclaiming your time, your energy, your heart. That's you saying, I deserve more than uncertainty. I deserve more than almost. That's you no longer making space in your life for someone who couldn't fully see you, value you, or choose you. You're not losing someone who showed up for you. You're letting go of someone who didn't, and that's a powerful shift. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, that's clarity, that's growth. The pain doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. It means you're healing from something that was never whole to begin with. And healing doesn't always feel like progress, but trust me, it is. Every day you choose to stop reaching for someone who couldn't reach back. You're choosing yourself. And that is how you begin to truly move forward. One of the biggest traps we fall into is mistaking attention for affection or effort for intention. When someone gives us just enough to keep us holding on, a late night message, a compliment here and there, maybe a moment of vulnerability that feels intimate, it's easy to think, see, they care. There's something real here. But what we have to ask ourselves is not asterisk if asterisk they care, but asterisk how asterisk they care. Because caring isn't enough, effort isn't enough, the question is, asterisk, is it consistent? Asterisk, is it mutual? Does it feel safe and whole? Or are you constantly waiting for reassurance? You can't build a meaningful connection on mixed signals. You can't create a loving relationship when you're always left guessing.
And yet, so many people stay in this place where they're surviving on emotional crumbs, little moments of closeness that keep them emotionally invested, while the other person avoids
Commitment, and what happens over time is that you start confusing those scraps for a meal. You convince yourself that you don't need more, that this is just what love feels like when it's complicated or not the right time. But let's be real. If you have to chase clarity, it's not real intimacy. If you're constantly wondering where you stand, you're not being loved, you're being strung along. And every time you justify their inconsistency, you teach yourself that this is all you deserve. That emotional inconsistency is somehow normal. That love is supposed to feel anxious, unsure, unbalanced. But love doesn't leave you in a state of confusion. It doesn't make you question your worth, or compete for attention, or constantly check your phone hoping today they'll act like you matter. Love is calm, it's consistent, it shows up, it's not always flashy or dramatic, but it doesn't make you feel like you're on unstable ground. You deserve someone who doesn't make you wonder, someone who speaks with actions, not just words, someone who makes you feel secure in the quiet moments, not just exhilarated in the highs. You deserve someone who chooses you, not someone who keeps you as a backup plan while they figure out their life, or their feelings, or themselves. When you settle for someone who gives you less than you need, you start lowering the bar for what love should look like. But the truth is, you set the standard for how people treat you. If you keep accepting inconsistency, that's what you'll keep getting. If you demand clarity, honesty, and emotional presence, not just with words, but with actions, then that's what you'll attract. So if someone can't meet you in the middle, if they keep pulling away just when you start to open up, don't take it personally. Take it as information. That's them showing you where they are, and it's your job to believe them. We often think that healing from a breakup means just moving on, finding someone new, staying busy, distracting ourselves until the pain fades into the background. But real healing, the kind that actually transforms you, doesn't come from moving on quickly. It comes from going inward, from facing what the experience revealed about how you see yourself, how you value yourself, and what you've been willing to accept in the name of love. Because here's the truth, some of the most important work you'll ever do happens after the heartbreak. It happens in the silence, in the stillness, in the moments when there's no one else there to validate you. You start to ask yourself questions you maybe didn't before. Why did I stay so long when I wasn't being fulfilled? Why did I keep trying to prove myself to someone who never made me feel chosen? Why was their approval so important to me? And answering those questions, honestly, is how you begin to reclaim your power. Breakups have a way of exposing the parts of us that still need healing. Maybe it's the part of you that ties your worth to being accepted by someone else. Maybe it's the part that confuses chemistry with compatibility, or passion with value. Whatever it is, this is your opportunity to look at it clearly and say, this isn't who I want to be anymore. This isn't the kind of love I want to keep chasing. When you stop looking for someone else to complete you and start focusing on becoming whole within yourself, everything shifts. You start setting higher standards, not out of pride, but out of peace. You stop entertaining people who don't show up fully because you've built a life and a sense of self that doesn't depend on being chosen to feel valuable. You're not auditioning anymore. You're not shrinking or bending or hoping, someone finally sees what you've had all along. And the best part is, healing in this way means you stop carrying the past into your future. You're not repeating patterns. You're not using new relationships to cover up old wounds. You're showing up as someone who's already grounded, already worthy, already enough, whether someone else sees it or not. You become the kind of person who doesn't chase clarity, you create it. You don't beg for love, you attract it by being aligned with what you truly deserve. Because once you've done the work, once you've faced the pain and found your way through it, you're no longer afraid of being alone. You're afraid of settling. You're afraid of forgetting who you are. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about remembering who you are.